inspired this desk is the Black Panther throne. So I wanted to take those features and incorporate that into the desk because I thought that would be really cool. So I started by writing down or drawing a highly technical drawing here. So I drew all the dimensions to make sure everything was going to fit, the length of the desktop, and make sure someone can actually fit in between those two legs, and the size of the back, make sure everything was all going to work. All right, let's build this desktop. So I'm working with mainly MDF on this build. I needed 2 pieces of 3/4 inch MDF together to get a total of 1.5 inch total thickness. 3/4 inch is a little too thin for a desktop. This will be able to support heavier stuff and be really sturdy. So I cut it down to a rough size. It's not the exact size because I wanted to glue it together first and then be able to cut it to the exact dimensions once those 2 pieces have glued and have finished drying. So now that's dry, we're gonna go ahead and cut the exact dimensions of the desktop. Then once everything's cut, go ahead and sand it down, make sure everything's nice and smooth, and make sure those edges are nice and round. Now it's ready to prep for getting painted, and so we just wipe everything down, make sure to get all that sawdust off. So we go ahead and throw down some primer first so that paint adheres to the wood better. And actually didn't like the spray paint primer. Actually, I didn't like that possibility of even spray painting the desktop at all. As you can see, it was kind of windy, and especially the spray paint seemed like it was kind of blotchy and uneven. I just did some white primer to put on first, kind of over the top of that kind of the spray paint primer, and that seemed to work a little bit better, kind of making sure that everything gets a nice, even, smooth coat of primer all over the desk. And then I threw down that black semi-gloss. It makes it look real good. Now that the desktop is finished, let's move on to some legs. The lovely artwork eye candy there is provided by my daughter. She does an excellent work. So let's go ahead and cut out all of the pieces needed to make these legs. And using my router to go ahead and cut those grooves on the front of the legs there. And then to cut the curved groove, I thought would be kind of difficult, but actually using the other piece as a guide actually worked out pretty well. I wanted the grooves to be black, so we go ahead and get rid of that sawdust and throw down the black spray paint in those grooves. So these legs have curves in them, so I want to go ahead and use some 3/4 inch plywood for that curved part, and then use this trick called kerf bending. Since I know plywood is in layers and it might bend a little bit better. I think you can use MDF too, but I've never done it before, and I'm going to go ahead and try this plywood and see how it works. Now that we got everything cut, we're going to go ahead and assemble all the pieces and make one leg, kind of glue it together, and then use a brad nailer, I think some like 1.5 inch nails to assemble those. All right, here's the magic of kerf bending, where you want to bend wood. Basically, you just cut grooves out into the wood, and then it allows it to bend. You can get all technical about how much you want the piece to bend and measure the distance between the cutout and how many cutouts you need. But I just eyeballed it, and it ended up working all right. Here's the magic of it bending. So those cutouts allow it to kind of break apart from the rest and allow it to bend. All right, let's take this part that needs to bend, throw down some glue, and nail it in. All right, we need to cut off that little piece of wood there so it can sit flush on the ground. So we're gonna go ahead and use a planer to go ahead and shave off a couple layers of that wood there. And then we'll go ahead and sand it down. Now that the legs are all put together, we're gonna go ahead and use some wood filler to go ahead and fill those cracks. And then after that, as dried, then we're gonna go ahead and sand it down, make everything all nice and smooth. Once that's done, wipe it all down and get ready to throw on the paint. I just put some painter's tape in the black grooves that I wanted to keep black, since the rest of it I was painting kind of like a metallic color. One would think I'd learned my lesson using the gray spray paint primer from the desktop, but nah. What actually worked the best is using the white paint as a primer. It was a more thicker coat and it went on nice and even and smooth. Then after that white primer was dry, I used metallic spray paint. I tried looking at metallic paint. It was really expensive. Didn't really get the finish that I wanted, so I just ended up actually going with spray paint. And I think it turned out pretty well. And after that dried, I took out the painter's tape, just kind of had to twist it so it wasn't pulling the paint up. So all in all, I think the legs turned out pretty well. All right, time to mount these. And so I just made sure that they were sitting flush on the side of the desktop there, and all in the front and the back, and then go ahead and just screw them in. Looking good. So creating this back piece was a little tricky. I had to make sure that everything was even and kind of a perfect circle on the bottom and the top, because the whole thing isn't perfect circle. There's kind of like a middle piece that kind of stretches a little bit. So I created these little tick marks to make sure that I got the correct measurement, and also I measured for that middle ring on there that will be black. Once I created all my tick marks, then I just played connect the dots, and then the top part was kind of tricky. I had to manually draw that kind of by just looking at it, because it was kind of hard to follow any kind of, you know, guideline. And then also replicating that on the other side, that was also tough too. So I kind of eyeballed both those, and I think it turned out pretty well, just basically eyeballing that part. Now time to use the old jigsaw to get that cut out. Once that's cut out, then you go ahead and sand everything down, get it all smooth. So I'm gonna mount this to the back of the desk, and I'm gonna cut a small little groove, about 1.5 inch thick groove to fit on the back of the desktop. And I'm using a router right here to cut that little groove off, so it kind of can sit on that desktop and put some of its weight on there rather than relying just the screws. And this will help stabilize it a lot better. I'm gonna go ahead and throw in my black paint because the bottom part needs to be black, and the top, I'm gonna do little pinstripes, kind of like the throne picture on the top part too. But I ended up kind of spray painting it, all of it black, to kind of have that, you know, that base coat look all the same. And then here I throw in that kind of the pinstripe painter's tape down here, this vinyl painter's tape, which turned out really nice. So I was able to get that little pinstripe of black. Here I'm measuring for that bottom black ring and then also the middle black ring. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure that, and then I'll throw down the painter's tape to be able to basically block that off. So when I paint everything that metallic spray paint, this will protect the black part. All right, I got all the black parts covered that I want to protect and stay black, so I can just spray paint the rest using that metallic spray paint. As soon as I finished spray painting, and while it's still kind of wet, I removed the tape, and then some of it kind of took up a little bit of the black underneath. But that's fine. So I just basically kind of touched it up with some other black paint, using just kind of like a little paintbrush, and kind of touched everything up. All right, here I'm putting some holes that you can see on the throne. They're kind of like little rivets or whatever they are, but basically I should have done this before I spray painted. Kind of lack of planning, and actually I thought I was going to do something different, but I ended up just drilling holes and then kind of filling them in with spray paint on cardboard and dipping a Q-tip in it. All right, let's mount this bad boy. So I'm finding the center of that back piece, and I'm also finding the center of the desktop, so I can align those two pieces and make sure that thing is centered. And I pre-drilled some holes in here, so once I get it mounted, I can just go ahead and slip a screw right in there, nice and easy. So those are already pre-drilled. And last but not least, I ordered some white vinyl stickers that I'll mount above each leg. And one side says wisdom and one side says loyalty. Boom, desk is done. Next up is the Black Panther PC, which is gonna be sweet. That's almost done, so stay tuned for that. And then next up, we're gonna throw everything all together. The monitor's mounted and everything, so stay tuned.